Julie Gunlock, how you doing today?
I'm doing well.
I appreciate you coming in studio. A lot of stuff. You've been very busy at Acculturated. A couple of pieces to talk about, including, and I love this because I'm a voracious reader. I'm always looking for books to read. And you reviewed a new book, How to Raise an Adult, right? Is that the name of the book?
Yeah, I brought my copy of it, How to Raise an Adult, by Julie Lythcott-Haims. It's a really great read. It's actually very entertaining too. She gives a lot of sort of personal stories and anecdotes. She was the freshman dean at Yale University. I'm sorry, at Stanford University, and so she has a lot of sort of real life experience dealing with young kids. And what she writes about is how sort of the hovering and the helicopter parenting trend is really harming kids from a psychological standpoint. Kids have absolutely, and I say kids, and she actually says, you know, college kids, as they've become known. But really, freshman year, you're 18 years old, and you're really not a kid anymore. And yet, kids are now called college kids. And so she talks about these college kids and how they are, you know, they're sort of unleashed on the world, and many of them lack coping skills. And so she's talking about the stress and anxiety that is typical at Ivy League schools, but now we're seeing it everywhere. Not necessarily at Ivy League schools, but at all schools, and just sort of among all the kids of this age group. So it's a really great read if you're interested in these issues. If you're a parent and you worry that you might be, you know, sort of hovering a little, or you know, might be doing a little too much for your children, this is a great read. I will say too. I found her incredibly compassionate in this book. She actually, in the introduction, she says that she, too, is one of the parents that she writes about. I feel this way as well, but I think it's really important. And I think Lenore Skenazy, who's sort of the founder of the free-range kid movement, which is the opposite of helicopter parenting, she has that same tone, which is to be sympathetic to parents, because what we can't forget is that part of the reason that it's so terrifying nowadays to raise kids is because we have a media that is constantly posting terrifying headlines. You know, the statistics might say crime is down, and you know, children are safer than ever before, and they're healthier than ever before. But we don't see those headlines. We see scary things. So I think what's really important in convincing parents to sort of alter the way they're parenting and not hover so much is to speak to them with compassion, and she really does.
I absolutely agree with you. I think also that there's that peer pressure. You know, if you live in a neighborhood or if your kids go to school and there are a lot of other helicopter parents there, it's weird, but you know, you don't want your kids to think that they're that they're
neglected,
different, or that you're different because you're not a helicopter parent, right?
Right.
If this is how postmodern society expresses love for their children, by smothering them, does this make you a bad parent?
Yeah.
Does this make you, are your kids going to feel like they were neglected because you're a free-range parent?
Yeah.
And these are, you know, listen, I have a great deal of sympathy. As a father of 5, I don't tell anybody else how to raise their kids because I'm struggling the best I can to raise mine. And I think that it's that way with every parent. I don't know a parent who really should be dogmatic about here's how to do it.
Right.
But what I like about this, it sounds like there are some stories, maybe some things to avoid. You know, you can look and see red flags, because one of the things that struck me about this, Julie, is, you know, I always talk about it's not my job as a parent. You want to, as your parent, make sure that your kids have a great day, right? They go to bed with a smile on their face. But it's not your job as mom or dad to ensure that your kids' every day is their best day ever.
Right.
You've got to be able to think long term. You've got to be able to think about your job being to produce a responsible, capable adult.
Yeah. And
one of these stories that you brought up was this 10-year-old, quote, rich kid who calls himself a kidult. He's 10. He gets a $350 a month allowance. He has his own Gold American Express credit card, you say. When asked if he had chores, the kidult responded, "I don't have any. I just relax. My nanny does everything."
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, I'm not trying to tell other people how to parent, but I'm really concerned about how
Yeah, and that's
this kid's going to be as a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old.
Right. I actually said in the piece, look, we can just sort of shrug that off as the ramblings of a child of the super rich, but and I did put that in there as an example of parents who are not setting their child up for a normal adulthood, or to even be able to cope with adult decisions or adult things you need to do. The author of this book really goes into that. She talks about how we as parents in modern parenting, we are so caught up in the accomplishments that our children have to gain. They play piano, they're on the travel soccer team, they play baseball, they're on the honor roll, they got first in this, they got these certain grades. What she says, what we're forgetting is we need to teach them how to cut their own meat, how to take out the garbage, how to do chores, how to care for their own toys. How to do proper introductions, shake a hand, say your name, say hello, have a conversation, make eye contact. These are the kinds of things that used to be sort of basic lessons that parents would teach their children. We're not doing that anymore. She gives some fantastic examples as a dean at an Ivy League school of she tells this one story of seeing a mom and daughter who appeared to be lost, and so she stopped. She introduced herself. She offered to help them find their way. The daughter didn't say a word. It turns out, and so she thought, well, maybe this is a freshman. Turns out the daughter was a graduate student applying for a PhD program, and her mother did all of her talking. And so here again, you have a case of a mother who's clearly taken such care of her daughter that her daughter is incapable of having simple conversations or helping herself. I mean, this lack of coping skills leads to, and the author talks about this as well, it leads to depression, it leads to anxiety. And she has some statistics in this book that are absolutely frightening. Kids now, young adults today are really dealing with stress and anxiety. And frankly, a lot of it can really be traced back to parents that just did everything for them.
Yeah, I mean, look, being in your 20s now is I think harder than it was when I was in my 20s. The unemployment rate's higher, wages have stagnated. Undeniably, there's more reason, I think, to be stressed if you're in your 20s. But by that same token, again, even as adults, it's interesting, Julie, that you talk about that grad student. I mean, because this can continue into adulthood, particularly with a weak economy. My daughter, who will be 29, my oldest daughter, will be 29 this year. And after she graduated, she was struggling to find a job. There was a point when she actually asked if she could come home back to Virginia. And, this is one of those stories, Julie, I'm sure someone's going to call me a bad parent. But I said no. I said, we'll help you out. But you don't want to be here in Virginia. Right. She didn't really know anybody. We moved her senior year in high school. I said, that's not really where you want to be.
Right.
So no, I don't want you to come. I'd love for you to come home. I'd love to see you, but I don't think that's what's best for you. What can we do to help you where you are now?
Yeah.
So that you don't feel this way.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to tell somebody that you love, that you don't think it's best that they come home and return to the nest.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, it sucks to tell your daughter that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think ultimately it was the best thing for her. I think that she's much happier. I think that she's much farther along doing what she wants to do than if she had returned home to a place where she didn't want to be.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, listen, parenting shouldn't be easy. This is one of the things. We are always looking for things to be so easy. Parenting is invariably going to be damn difficult at times.
It's awful.
It's going to be hard. You're going to have to do things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do things that are hard for you as a parent.
And I think it's important.
And you've got to be able to suck it up and do it.
And I think it's important for parents. It's totally true. And I think it's important for parents to understand that there are short-term satisfaction in helping your child out of an immediate problem. But longer term down the road, you have robbed that child of learning coping skills. I think when you have kids that are having trouble in school with their friends, or they they can't get out of a certain situation. And sometimes you have to back up, and it might be painful, but you have to let kids sort of work it out for themselves. I mean, not extreme cases, or if they're being bullied to a point that they're miserable. But in some cases, parents really do need to back off. And also, this really touches on overscheduling kids. Just because your child doesn't turn out to be a concert pianist, listen, she talks about that. She talks about her own experience. Her son was really struggling with Spanish, and she and her husband really believed it was important for her children to learn another language, but her child was miserable, and he was studying for long hours, and he had sort of red eyes, and he was exhausted. And, they sort of made this isn't making him happy, and it's stressful for us to watch this happen. And so I think it's as a parent, it's sort of nice to hear what other parents have gone through, and it's sort of like giving you permission, to sort of go, okay, yeah, I if she's done it, I can do it. And I think more parents really need to read books like this and follow, Lenore and other people who've really examined this issue in depth. And again, we're starting to see, a clue as to the psychological welfare of kids when we do this. So it's a very, very important book, and I encourage everyone to check it out, or at least read my review.
All right. Now, before we run out of time here, an alternate headline or an alternate title for that book actually could be "Mamas Don't Let Your Kids Grow Up to Be Ariana Grande."
Ah, yes.
Now that I think about it, you also wrote about, right? Or simply "Don't Lick the Donuts."
Yes.
A guide to raising responsible adults. So you got your piece at Acculturated. Lick donuts. Denounce America, call for action against childhood obesity, all in a day's work for pop star Ariana Grande.
That was a fun piece to write. I wrote it very quickly. I was a little bit passionate about her donut licking incident. Yes, I'm sure most of your listeners are aware that this teenage pop star got caught on a bakery surveillance video licking a tray of donuts and sort of kissing her boyfriend and making kind of a spectacle of herself. And then a tray of donuts came out, and she said an expletive, and "I hate America, I hate Americans." Maybe I got the order wrong, but you get the point. And so the bakery, God bless them, released this footage. And look, she waited 24 hours to issue an apology. First mistake. Then her apology was filled with this sort of babble that only comes out of Hollywood. And it was sort of saying, "I'm sorry, but actually, it's fat Americans that made me do it," because she said that she's just really concerned about childhood obesity. And I don't know if her point was, so if I lick the donuts, nobody will get them. But no one knew she was licking the donuts. So anyway, it was a completely baffling apology, which I wrote about. And I also, the idea that this woman is saying that she licked the donuts because she's concerned about childhood obesity. She was patronizing a donut shop. So, I mean, the whole thing was ridiculous. And I love how Hollywood stars try to turn to public policy sometimes when they do something stupid. They try to sound like a policy expert on these things and just muck it up
Right.
even more. Because, of course, like 10 hours later, she had to issue a video apology, which she sort of took back all of her comments. Anyway, the whole thing was a disaster. But these things are fun to write on. So I appreciate her. Well, I don't appreciate her licking donuts, but these things are very fun to write on.
They are, and Hollywood will provide no shortage, I'm sure, of continued buffoonery to opine about. Julie, thank you as always for coming in. I appreciate talking to you, and glad to get a chance to see you as well.
Yes, great to see you last week, and great to be on. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll talk to you next week. Julie Gunlock, you can find her at iwf.org. Again, also doing a lot of writing at Acculturated these days, and we'll talk with Julie again next week here on NRA News, Cam & Company.